I went to John White Elementary, then went on to North in seventh grade. Uh, which, like I was telling you, that's where I first laid eyes on Coach Burtis. He was a gym teacher there. And don't get in trouble because he had that paddle, and I felt it. Bringing back a lot of memories. You bringing back a lot of memories of bent over throwing up on that track field, my man. Because that was real. And you, if you ain't show up to conditioning, you might as well not show up for the team. Some of the athleticism, and some of the stuff I've seen coming up through them ranks, man, was miraculous. You know, Steubenville alone, and Yasha Yets, they had a team that was. Listen, man, when you see this stuff with the naked eye, it's totally different. I don't care. Like I watch a basketball game with my son, it'll get down to the last 60 seconds, and there's a team down by 6 or 8, and I tell them it ain't over yet.
All right, we're back with one more down. Today we have Tyrone Lockett, former Chaney player, 1988, 1989, performed under Coach Burtis during the early part of his tenure. Was a wide receiver, punt returner, and kick returner, and one of the big homies in my neighborhood that really helped guide us along as we were cutting our teeth and getting beyond the confines of the porch and the reach of our moms. So I'm glad to get a chance to have some time with you, Tyrone, and just reminisce, get some insight into your football journey, your football experience, and then, just that common experience of growing up and coming of age in Youngstown during those 80s and those 90s. So it's
Without a
good to see
doubt,
you, man.
I'm still 10 toes down. What's going on?
Not much. When we start off, we'd like to try to get a feeling for our guests' background and origin story. You've definitely had a lot of experiences, been many places, but I do remember when your family moved on to our street on Winona back in those late 80s, just the dynamic of your mom raising two boys and keeping you guys in check. But can you tell me about your start and where you come from in Youngstown?
Well, actually, I was born in a small town called Redstone, Pennsylvania, which is 30 miles south of Pittsburgh and about 5 miles from California University of Pennsylvania. Small town, country town. Uh, and when I turned 4, we moved and relocated to Youngstown. I had an aunt, great aunt that was already in Youngstown. So we relocated there to the east side where I got my start. Uh, Ended up going to John White Elementary. I stayed over by the McGuffey area between McGuffey and Stewart on Lansdowne. That's where we got our first start at. But I went to John White Elementary, then went on to North in seventh grade, uh, which, like I was telling you, that's where I first laid eyes on Coach Burtis. He was a gym teacher there. And don't get in trouble because he had that paddle, and I felt it. Anyway, uh, a lot of them dudes playing football for Easton, all that felt it too. So I ain't alone. But yeah, then I went ahead. My mom moved around town. She decided to go into the ROTC program at YSU, enlisted into the officers program. Also went in as an officer in the Army. But we lived on the north side, and I went to Hayes in the 8th grade. We moved around. We jumped around. Remotely, I ended up on the south side, and that's when I started going to Chaney.
Now, when you make that transition from PA over to Ohio and get your beginnings on that east side, who are some of those first guys that you end up meeting or buddying up with?
Well,
And
you know what? My first, I could say, first friend was my next door neighbor. His name was Terrence Miles. I don't know if you know Terrence. He got a sister named Tara Troy. Um, we ran around his yard all the time playing football and all that. He went to Watkins Christian Academy. He didn't go to John White with me, but we was thicker than two. You know what I mean? We stayed with each other. So I
now,
guess I could say because we played for the Chargers together too. So that's probably where I got my first taste.
when you the new guy coming into a situation, you know how Youngstown is. You kind of have to get that testing and that acclimation. And then, me knowing who you are and what you were like as a young teen, I kind of have an idea. But, were there differences or, did you have to prove yourself in that environment or did you just
You
kind
know
of
what?
go
You know
in with the
what? Not really. Not really. I never. When I was young like that, I ain't really feel myself having to prove nothing. Uh, I was never really bothered or nothing like that. Nobody bully. I was never bullied or nothing like that. I kind of like I just fit in. You know what I mean? Back then, I was always the smallest guy in the bunch. But I just fit in. Nobody bothered me. You know what I mean? It was all good.
Now, what was your appeal to athletics and football in particular as young guy?
Uh,
Was it the pro game, or did you have neighborhood influences that propelled you into wanting to try the sport in an organized fashion?
Man, when I came out the womb, they wrapped me up in the Steelers blanket. So it was unavoidable. You know what I mean? Before I could say goo goo gaga, you understand? I was knowing about football. You know. Then I messed around and was fortunate enough to see guys like Walter Payton tote that rock, Earl Campbell. You know what I mean? People like that. And I wanted to be them. I wanted to be them, Lynn Swan. So, just like a lot of little kids, you know what I mean? They have, guys they look up to and want to be like superheroes. And that's how I went. Yeah.
Now, when you get into that Steel Valley Little Chargers organization, what is that experience like for you, getting put through those paces and getting that real introduction to football, and during that time period we're talking about, we're still doing things like bull in the ring,
Oh
nutcracker,
yeah. Oh yeah.
bear crawls, crab in the field.
Oh
you
yeah.
know
Oh, it was
how
real.
how'd that
It was.
impact you?
Oh, listen. Uh, I mean, I knew a handful of people. As a matter of fact, me and Terrence, my neighbor, we started at the same time. Matter of fact, I think I got the idea from him. He was going out, you know what I mean, and play. I think he had already started practice. I saw him coming home. He had his stuff on. I said, what? I started talking to him. Next thing you know, I asked my mom to sign me up. And it was nothing nobody prepared me for. See, I had to get all mine from the mud. I didn't have no dad there. I didn't have no, I had to get mine from the mud. I learned all my lessons the hard way. Uh, Nobody told me about bull in the ring. Nobody told me about when you get hit, you better run like this. You better keep it because you can get hurt. And nobody told me nothing. They ain't told me how to hold the ball. They ain't told me how to tackle correctly. I learned. I learned quick. Best believe that. I mean, you got to understand when I played, we had people like Travis Donaldson. I don't know if you know Travis. He was a hell of a running back then. He's older than us. Stephen Woodbury. Uh, we had Stephen Watson. We we had a whole bunch of dudes that went on to play that I played against in the various high schools. I started out with the Chargers, and nobody really knew me. Like I say, at that point in time, I mean, I didn't hit 200 pounds until I turned like, man, 30, 36. You know what I mean? And no, I'll take that back, probably like 46. So back then I was small. So I was getting tossed around and I was just trying to keep my head afloat, but I never quit. I never wanted to quit. It was fun to me. No, I didn't hardly play. I didn't hardly get in. My first year, my first couple years, I didn't hardly get into games. But I just felt good wearing the uniform and this and that. You know what I mean? But I watched and I learned. I watched and I learned. And it had a big impact on me. You know, it showed me, you know what I mean, that I got to try this. I got to try this much harder. It also showed me that some guys, you know what I mean, gonna get, you know, a little bit of favoritism because they're known. And if you coming in and you ain't so big and you ain't this and that, and you unknown, you ain't gonna get no run in the little leagues unless you run like a 2.940. So I had to learn the hard way, but I stuck with it and I never ever quit, even though I didn't really play. And that's, you know, I just was happy to be there. You know what I mean? Wear uniforms.
That's a big theme in a lot of the guys that we've talked to. You know, when you're that first year player, you're kind of catching on and just mimicking what you see in front of you. So a lot of times you end up getting put into a position up on the line or somewhere where you're not going to impact the plays. Where did you start out as your first position?
You know what, man? Man. It wasn't on no line, that's for sure. I'm trying to remember, man. Sheesh. I hadn't come into I could catch the ball. That was a natural thing that I always had, but they didn't throw the ball back then. Uh, man, I can't even remember if I even played on special teams. You know, it was like a Michael Jordan type thing. He ain't really getting no run until he, you know what I mean, came a little bit into himself and got into college and in high school. What, didn't he get cut? So it was like that type of deal. I can't even remember, man. I know I might have been like third, fourth string running back or something. You know? I can't remember, man. It was a while back. It was a while back.
You know, so as you're transitioning through that experience, you know, making your way up the little league ladder, pushing into that junior high age, you know, for you, what is your first significant memory of football where you knew you fit, you knew you belong, and you knew you could do it?
You know what, man? Once I got to my sophomore year at Chaney, because like I told you, I didn't play my freshman year. I was in the band. But once I got to then, and I kind of was already acclimated to hard work and this and that, and I fit right into the regimen that Coach Burtis had there. And being accepted wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard. Like I didn't have nobody talking me down or nothing like that. The morale there was always good. You know, then there was always standards on how a player's gonna act and how another player's gonna treat his fellow player, you know, his brother. So I didn't really have no outside of the race thing being new to me, because you know I was in schools where, you know, it was mostly black people, you know, and to go to Chaney, that was just like it wasn't really a barrier to me because, you know, I'm not racist or anything like that, but it was different. And that right there was the biggest thing. And then that was easy to accept and get by. As long as wasn't nobody treating me bad, I wasn't treating them bad. But getting into the physical part of it, you know, I was already, you know, I needed to tune some things and get better at a lot of things. But as far as physicality, I had it already. It was just a matter of finding where I should be, a place for me. and I kept hopping into the running back drills. I just knew it was like a child at a young age, just always want to be a running back. And I just kept hopping to the running back drills, this and that, this and that. And Tyrone Reynolds was there, and he's starting. Ain't nobody, you know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody getting no run. Dave Delbaccio was fullback. There's a couple other guys there. I can't. There was another guy named Dave. I can't remember his last name, but the running back thing was sold up. I remember one day I did something, and someone saw me catch the ball. They saw me catch a couple balls, and they already knew I was quick. And all of a sudden, for some reason, I was being told to sub in for Lance. There was a guy named Lance Julian. He played wing back. So if I'm not mistaken, his number was number 10. He played wing back, and he wasn't a wide out. And I think it was Coach Boyd. I can't remember. I think it was Coach Boyd. He wanted me to start subbing in with him. Now this was after rigorous times on the scout team. You know what I mean? We started doing our thing on the scout team and being noticed. So
Right.
it wasn't nothing that just happened overnight. But all of a sudden he was like, start subbing in with Lance. Before you know it, that's where I was. But then after time, them guys graduated and all. After time, I got moved to wide out. And that was my home. Kick return, punt return, wide out.
Yeah, because I don't get to participate in athletics until the 1990 season over at Chaney due to the racial balance transfer. Our street, we were supposed to go to South, but if you filled out racial balance transfer or had an address that was within that district, you could go to Chaney, but it caused you to forfeit all athletic participation in ninth grade. So, when you say that, there's that adjustment coming from one side of town to the other, and then all of a sudden the demographics are, change. You're all of a sudden in the minority in your school as opposed to the majority in some of those elementary, junior high experiences. So 90 season would have only have been Coach Burtis's fourth year as the head coach, which means that you got him in his second year as coach, transitioning from Coach Mady to his tenure over there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the hallmarks of what made our team successful for my era going forward was just that conditioning regimen. And, coaches discussed, some of the things that he was putting in place and building a culture there. But, what was it like for you guys
conditioning?
With that? Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. You bringing back a lot of memories. You bringing back a lot of memories of bent over throwing up on that track field, my man. Because that was real. And if you ain't show up to conditioning, you might as well not show up for the team. That was mandatory. You had to be there. If you wasn't there, you wasn't stepping on that field. And then the drills, the running, the heat. Oh, man, I done bent over a few times.
So one of the things that, the strategies that he used, we always started off the session with the 2 laps around the track before we stretch. And then depending on who came in with the front time and the back time, that dictated how many 40s we were going to run during conditioning. And then we had certain days where he might throw the 330s in there. I don't know if it was the same when you guys were there as when my class came through there, but it was almost failure by design, if you will, because when you tell guys there's a certain time on the front and somebody has to hit that, and then you put a back time that everybody's supposed to finish under, you already know that you're going to have, 5 to 8 guys every single session that's going to miss that back time. So you're building in another 8 or so sprints just right off of the top. You're supposed to start with 10 each day. But there were times where we would get up into the 40s and the 50s and the 60s of running
Nah, them
40
hundreds,
yards.
man. Them end zones, them bear crawling end zone to end zone, then getting up and running back. It man, them end zones to end zones is what got me. The quick hitters, I was cool. I got acclimated, but after you do so many of them, and he hit them end zone to end zones, what it was a lot mental because you think you're gonna be done after the next two. Your mind is tricking you to think, okay, we're going to just take a shower, we done. And right when you think you're getting off, end zone to end zone. Yeah, it was a treat. It was a
Now,
treat. Best believe that.
early on, and especially during the time that you guys were there, you don't have the success as far as the wins and losses and having the winning record, but there's a lot of tough guys on the team. There's a lot of tough games that you guys end up playing because, the city was very even at that point, and you had a lot of great teams in the area. You guys were still playing Ursuline on the schedule. You're still playing Mooney. Rand and South and the East have some really good teams and a lot of great players on there. You have the Kevin Harrises over at Wilson. You have the Derek Lewises at Rand, Tamron Smith over at South. So, it's a lot of guys that you can't never take a break within that league and with that competition. And then when we talk about Fitch, you're talking about Chuck Wesson and Chris Davis, guys like that, and a well-organized machine over there. So, as you're starting to rise up through that Chaney system, what are your experiences? What are your thoughts on some of the competition that you guys play?
Man, listen, man. I can stop your sentence right there. Let me listen, man. I done seen some of the athleticism and some of the stuff I've seen coming up through them ranks, man, was miraculous. Steubenville alone, and Yasha Yets, they had a team that was. Listen, man. When you see this stuff with the naked eye, it's totally different. But when you on the field playing against them with the naked eye, it's totally different. You know what I'm saying? Like the stuff that a lot of it wasn't hype. You feel what I'm saying? I still remember Colonel from Rand, quarterback. They called him Colonel. But you got to be out there. I had the privilege of being able to be fine-tuned and welcomed in by going against some of the best athletes Youngstown ever put out. Period. Them years right there. Period. Andre Mason for South. Man, listen, I can go on. My man Blue that played for South. I can go on and on and on. And so each team, they always had a powerhouse. And I went to school with most of them guys, elementary, junior high, Fred Harrison, the Harrisons, the Stewarts. Aldrich Jones called him Tank. Man, listen, the talent that I witnessed, yeah, I played against Kevin Harris. All of them, man.
Yeah.
I feel privileged, man, that I came up in that era. But we never backed down in none of them. Ever.
Yeah, you bring up the Colonel Ray Isaac, who
went
on to do great things over at YSU. He was definitely a guy that I followed. Watching his trajectory and his rise, and then you always use some of those guys, or at least for the guys of my class and our era. You had certain individuals that stood out, and you named a lot of those great names. Aldrich Jones was certainly a great player, went on to do really great things over at Westminster.
But you know what? Tamron Smith, freak of nature.
Oh yeah, we had Tam on early on in our process here, And then, of course, with him being a neighborhood guy, he's right over there on Sherwood. He's only 2-3 streets over from
Yeah.
us.
Oh yeah, I was
So
good friends with him and his brother, and yeah, I was always over there. I tell you what, we beat them. We beat. I was at Chaney. We beat South on their own field. I specifically remember that evening on
yeah,
their
Dave
own
Del
field.
Vecchio had 2 long runs in that game, and then it was
You know what I mean? Yep.
blocked field goal. So
Yep.
so
Yep.
tell,
We.
tell me about that. Like the way Youngstown was, these guys from different areas and competition through Little League. It's not like you're being introduced to guys. Those reputations are built at those lower levels. So you kind of know going into those games what certain guys have, what type of game you're going to have to bring to compete. What was that like, to build up to those games and being a South Side guy at that point and knowing that you're going to see those guys in the neighborhood crisscrossing through the city at the mall,
I mean,
what's that like?
it's it's well, it's always butterflies in your stomach when you know you get ready to go against your buddies. It's always that. I mean, uh, it had an extra kind of mysteriousness to it. Uh, it was always fun. Uh, the talks before the game and after the game never get just interesting. um, but more so, I grew up on the east side. I lived there most of my life. So, going against them fellas and then hearing after each play, hearing the talk on the field. And, I remember one particular time we was playing at YSU during the day. I think it was a weekend game. It was a day game. And I come across the middle on a slant. Uh, Listen, Johan Williams, Fred Harrison. That's one of the hardest. I would say that's the hardest I've been hit since I played for Chaney. I hopped up, but I felt it. After I felt like I was decapitated. And the only thing I heard when I got up was Fred Harrison. He was always silly. Hey Ty, how are you? And walked away. I said, hey, listen. I know people saw that. All I heard was, ooh. I hopped up, man. But I'm gonna tell you right now, man, for a second, I didn't know where I was. I caught my bearings. I can't remember if I caught the ball or not. I ain't dropped too many, but
I think even more important than the wins and the losses, you want your respect more than anything when you're going against your friends and going against guys that you want to test yourself. As far as the wins and losses go, when you're battling and it's not coming out in your favor week to week, for you, what was that like to be on a team where you're putting in the work, you're preparing, and then you're giving your all for those 48 minutes each competition, but you're just coming up short each time. How did you feel?
You know what, man? Nobody wants to lose and all that. But when you around an atmosphere that is an I believe atmosphere, that's a hard working atmosphere, that whatever happens, we're gonna bring it type atmosphere. Uh, you look at other things, you appreciate other things, even though you lost. You understand what I'm saying? You appreciate there's other barriers that you crossed and other accomplishments that you made even in losing. You understand? Uh, I never got, even though our record wasn't that good one particular year, I never got any blowback from nobody that I played against. Only thing I got was, man, y'all tough. I ain't never get, oh, look at y'all record, y'all sorry. Never. And I got my respect anyway, because they knew at any given moment, if I catch you with your pants down, it's a wrap. You know what I mean? I never was worried about anybody saying anything, but you know what? It wasn't about me. It was about the team. And if I heard anybody, if I was anywhere, I don't care if I was out on the weekend. You know, I didn't really go out to clubs that much, but I don't care if I was out. And if I heard somebody pillow talking, if I heard somebody pillow talking and saying something about one of my brothers, they're gonna hear from me. They're gonna hear from me. You understand what I'm saying? So the camaraderie, man, that's one thing I learned is camaraderie. You know, in my tenure there, and hard work and dedication. And no matter what, don't quit. Don't jump the fence and turn on your brothers. Why you think I couldn't play my senior year when I had to go to Fish? Why you think I ain't play? Do you think I could put a Fish uniform on?
Right. I was just about to ask you, like, so, you know, there's that pride, you know, once you get into that rivalry, you know, to have to, you feel like a turncoat if you were to
right. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. And I was asked. They knew who I was.
Right.
They knew who I was. And Chuck and Chris, and me and Chris was together every day. We lived close to each other. We was buddies. We was together every day. They tried. There's no way. There's no way, man. You know, and even if I would have, you know, it wouldn't have felt the same. I wouldn't have had the same umph. I probably wouldn't have been just like when Juju left Pittsburgh and went to, or Antonio Brown left. They wasn't as you know what I mean, as good as they was when they was with the Steelers. Right. I just couldn't. There's no way. So I just said, nah, I'm just not gonna play. And I didn't want to go to Fitch.
On you know, an interesting line because you know, I like even during the times where I was coaching, you know, I've had the opportunity to coach little league ball. I've coached middle school football, high school football, and then I had a stint to be a DB coach at the Division III college level. Coached baseball in high school, so you know, varying levels of success. But you know, I got a different perspective being on that side of it versus my attitude and my viewpoint as a player, because you know, when you're a player, you're looking at your role as an individual, you know, some of the success or some of the lack of success, certain guys may blame on other areas, other teammates, coming up with excuses and reasons why you didn't get the job done. But going through that coaching lane, you realize that it's more to it than just getting out there and performing. You know what I mean? There's preparation that goes into that. There's breakdowns in communication, misalignment. Mm-hmm. There's times where the other team is just better than you. There's times mm-hmm. where, you know, you may be in an environment where some of the calls don't go your way. So mm-hmm. and I started to look at that, and instead of thinking about it as wins and losses, I started to develop that attitude of wins and lessons. You know what I mean? Because mm-hmm. you're going to learn something, win or lose. You know, it's what you do with that information that is going to dictate whether you're successful or making strides. And then in some of those lessons, you know, that game in itself, getting knocked down or running into someone who's more prepared than you, who's stronger than you, quicker than you, faster than you, there's a certain amount of levity in that I don't want to use the term put you in your place, but it gives you immediate feedback on what you need to do to get better if you want to be successful. So, you know, in playing the game of football, you know, what are some of those things that you took away from football that you've used throughout life in terms of competing, whether it be employment, whether it be, you know, in your pursuit of things that you enjoy outside of the games, whether it be things that you bring to your fatherhood? What are some of those foundational teachings that you learn being an athlete that you carry over into your everyday life?
Loyalty to to whomever is in your camp, uh, never give up ever, no matter what a situation looked like going into it. Me, I like being an underdog. I love being an underdog because the spoils of that victory is so much better. You understand what I'm saying? And if you're the underdog, you're already down there. So which way is there to go? Up. That's the only way to go. Up. And as far as like my children, they already know. My youngest are 13. I got a set of twins, a boy and a girl. They already know. I don't care. Like I watch a basketball game with my son. It'll get down to the last 60 seconds and there's a team down by 6 or 8. And I tell them, it ain't over yet. It ain't over. And I'll be goddamn if that team that was down 1 by 2. You understand what I'm saying? Never ever go into a situation already thinking you're gonna lose. Never. David and Goliath, I'm real big on that. Never. And that's how I felt we was. David and Goliath during those years. And I loved it. I loved it because we slayed quite a few giants. We slayed quite a few giants. You know what? I can't even recall ever seeing no tears in the locker room. I'm sitting here trying to listen. I can never recall seeing any tears after any game in that locker room ever. And guess what? That next day, we was back on the field watching film. We was back there watching film. Everybody, everybody. And you know what we was thinking about? The next game. That one right there was behind us. We learned from this. Time for the next one.
Yeah, because
But go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, like we we always pointed to those first couple teams that Coach Burtis coached as the foundation that helped us be successful. So, you know, uh, we get City in '90. Of course, Mac is a senior that year. Aubrey Dawson. We have um Coach Lamonji, who would have been on some of those
He was
teams
on
that
my
you
squad.
right. So,
Paul Lamonji.
the Chaney brand, if you will, is full of Chaney tradition. So the coach
Yeah.
played there. You have Alan Mikovich, you have Paul Lamonji. Everybody has some sort of Chaney affiliation that's on that coaching staff, and they're telling you about the tradition. They're telling you about how you have to be tough, how you have to
Right.
persevere.
And that's a good thing because they couldn't tell you that if they didn't live it.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? That was a good
And
thing.
I give a lot of credit to what Matt Gilchrist went through those early years because we're all competitors. We all want to win, but you have to commit to a certain mindset to actually make it happen. And
Correct.
him and him, Aubrey, they took us young guys under their wing and they showed us through their play. Okay, we might be going over here to play South. We might go over here to play Wilson Rand. You're going to go into Austin Town as, Boardman. Those atmospheres are going to be, frenzied. You can't be scared. You can't focus on a mistake that you made on this play. You have to keep playing through to the next play. And once that attitude and that hunger for another piece of success starts to set in and it spreads through the team, then it just becomes a routine. So 5-5 in '90 city title for me and my guys. That wasn't the ceiling. We looked at that as the floor because we're like, man, 5-5, like, nah, we better than that. we get to the playoffs in 91. We win a playoff game in 92. And then you just see what that standard does. But it's not our class that sets it. It's the classes before us. It's that 88 year, it's that 89 year, it's that playing Steubenville really, really close, and we get to be the beneficiaries of, well, we're no longer the Chaney guys that just keep it close or we hit hard throughout the game but lose it in the end. Now, we're expected to win. When they see
it's changed.
come out there,
I'm glad to see
it's
that.
a different type of fervor. So we very rarely get to thank those guys who paid that price and set that standard ahead of us. But you're one of those people that represent that. And knowing you as a neighborhood guy, I knew what you were about. I got to watch how you handled yourself, and you made a reference to it early on in the segment of your stature and your size. But me observing you as an older guy to look up to in the neighborhood, I never saw you use that as an excuse in terms of commanding your respect. You always carried yourself as a guy that was willing to go to any lengths and pay any price to make sure that at the end of it, that person left knowing that they had to respect you. So, I know after your high school experience, you made that transition into military life. Can you tell me about?
Well, actually, I went to college first. I went to Bowling Green State.
Yeah,
I went to
forget about that.
Yeah, I went to Bowling Green State. But what happened was I ended up, because my mother had moved to Columbus. She had moved again. And that's what I called my home now. And I met a girl there. And she became my girlfriend. And I went away to school. Come to find out, I get a call that she was pregnant. So coming out of high school, my mother wanted me to follow in her footsteps. She wanted me to go to the military from the jump. I didn't want to. So I went ahead to college. I heard the news of a girl being pregnant. I couldn't stay. I had to do something. I went to the Army. And I said about a month or two after I found out, I was in the MEP station. That's how that went.
So if I'm following you correctly, you're a young guy, 19 years old, about 18, 19 years old. And then
19.
What's that impact like for a young man who doesn't have the influence of a father, but has a strong mother, a disciplined mother? Did you feel that sense of responsibility that you had to do what you needed to do?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And that's why I did it. And it wasn't just my mother. I had a strong grandmother. I knew what I had to do. I knew what I had to do, and I knew what I had to do to be unselfish, because I couldn't think about me, just me no more. My son is 31 now. That's my oldest son. I ended up marrying her. That's how I went. I had to do what I had to do, man. I mean, I had to put what I wanted to the side. And that's how I went. I mean, I can't say I regret it. We're always going to look back and say, what would have happened if I would have did this, or I did that. I still think today, what would have happened if I'd have played quarterback? Because that's what they were grooming Coach Brothers. I was next. That's what I was going to be playing that next year, quarterback. I don't know what scheme he had. I'm thinking a lot of run, a lot of wish. I don't know what was about to go down, but if that's where he needed me, that's where I was going. So I often think about that. What would have happened?
Now, when with you having to shift your mindset and take on that new responsibility of providing as a father, because when we're talking about this, this is 1991, so we're talking about Desert Storm. Committing yourself for a certain number of years in defense of the country. Where do you end up getting stationed initially?
You know what? My first duty station was uh, Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Listen, everybody was going to Japan, Germany, and getting shipped. And I'm sitting there with my knees buckling, like, man, they about to ship me to Zimbabwe somewhere. And I'm sitting there, and they read mine and say, Fort Devens. I was like, what? Massachusetts. Hey, man, when I got there, the snow was so high. It was in the dead of winter, man. I'd never seen so much snow in my doggone life. It was cold, man. That was my first duty station. Um, I had two MOSs. One was X-ray technician. I did my training in Fort Sam Houston. That's San Antonio. The other was finance. I did that training in Indianapolis, Fort Benjamin Harris. Um, I did my boot camp in Fort Knox. Uh, Basically, man, I didn't really go too many other places outside of there. That was my tenure. I stayed stateside.
Well, that and you have to have a network all across the globe, right? So even if you're not
Hmm.
getting placed, in international territory, there's a it's that teamwork concept still. Everybody has a role, everybody has a job to do to make the whole thing function for the good of the team, if you will. Um, with that transition into military life, I'm I'm assuming that you have to pull from some of those experiences that you went through as a football player just to progress and cope within that structure. Is it easy to adjust to those commands and those drills and learning that disciplined way of life?
You know what? What I liked about the whole experience, the military experience, was the physicality.
Mm.
That was the fun part. I didn't, you know what I mean? The discipline, it wasn't hard. It wasn't hard. Um, every now and again, you get a young officer or somebody young that outranked you that wanted to throw his weight around, you know. And it's usually the dudes that got their lunch money taken in high school and stuff. Yeah, yeah, I mean, you just take it with a grain of salt and move on.
Yeah.
But it wasn't bad, man. I fit right in. As far as the traveling and all that, I was moved around all my life anyway. It wasn't bad. It wasn't hard.
Now, do you get opportunities to play intramural football or base against base football during your time in
Oh, I
the
played.
service?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I played. We won a championship down in Sam Houston. I was a receiver, of course,
Mhm.
and we played. They had flag. Uh, and a matter of fact, won the championship for Devons too. Flag. I
Now,
played front.
what's that level of competition like? Because I mean, when you talk about military service, you're getting a lot of former great athletes and guys who
That's what
could have
I'm
definitely
exactly.
played on another
Exactly.
level and been big time guys, but you know that pathway there,
Athleticism was through the roof.
yeah.
The in shapeness.
Mm.
Hey, through the roof. You
I
see some
imagine
freaks.
there's a lot of aggression in that as well.
A whole lot of aggression. You see some freaks, and like you say, guys that went far in college playing, high school, all state, all a little bit of everything you see in that. Put that together with getting up at 4 and doing PT every morning
Mm.
and how in shape you are. You
Now,
saw something.
when you decide to separate from military life and military service, what comes
Hmm.
next for you then?
Well, I ended up getting an honorable discharge. Um, some things went on post with my wife, and we ended up divorcing. She took my son. I couldn't take it. So even though I stayed on post and they went on back to Columbus, my mind wasn't. So one day, I got called into the company commander's office, and he spoke to me, and he's like, "You know what? You know, I was a young soldier at one point in time, and I had issues, and I found out that sometimes you got to step back from certain issues and relax, give it a break." So he offered me to honorably. It was what was it a chapter? I think it was a chapter 11 or chapter 13. They gave me a choice. Said I can go ahead and leave for like 2 years and come back. You know, which I accepted because at that point in time, like my mind wasn't right. I couldn't do my job right and this and that. Constantly thinking about my son. So I ended up, getting out, and I never returned. I moved back to Columbus. When I got back to Columbus, mysteriously, my son, his mother dropped him off. I was living with my aunt at the time, and she dropped him off with her while I was at work, and never came back and got him. She never came back. I had my so now I have my son. Now I'm a single parent. Uh, times got hard. Uh, I ended up linking up with the wrong crowd and doing things that caused me to get my first felony. Doing things for money because I'm gonna take care of my son no matter what.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm working jobs, but it just didn't seem like there was enough. Milk, Pampers. It was crazy. It was new to me. I caught my first felony, and I couldn't go back to the military after that. And that's how that went. You know.
No, and I only want to talk on the level that you're comfortable with on that, and but I
Hmm.
think it's that experience. Society may look at it as a black mark, but as you stated,
Hmm.
you're doing what you felt was necessary for you to provide for your child as a single
Hmm.
parent, as a male. Um, when you think back to that time and the responsibility of being a young single father and trying to have and make sure that he's secure, you're secure, and then we also have to think about the way that the young man mind works, the risk taking, that you don't get that extra level of thought and second guessing and analyzing that you get as an older, more mature man. In the moment you have a or B decision, and you're gonna choose either A or you're gonna choose B, and then let the chips fall
Hmm.
where they may.
Hmm.
When you get that felony, and then you have to accept the consequence of that, and your son is in a position, you're in a position.
Hmm.
Can you take me through how that impacts you? Where is your mindset at that time of your life and that age? And then knowing that, because let's be honest, some of us as individuals out here in this world, we're just not in that position because we didn't get caught. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
I can't stand in judgment of you for what happened to you, because it could have just as easily been me. But, I can only imagine as a father myself, you know, uh, of having to pay that price and go through that experience, not knowing what's going to happen on the other side of that. You know,
Hmm.
what is it about you and your spirit and that point in your life that what helps you get through that point? How did you deal with that, that consequence and that separation from the general society and the general public?
You know what, man? A lot of times individuals get into certain situations and they don't want to accept it. And when they don't want to accept it, that makes it that much harder. Now, when you come into grips with yourself and realize, I know why I'm in this situation. I know what I did. And then try to, you got to cope with the consequences behind it instead of fighting those consequences. Then it's a little bit smoother, a lot less stress. You're going to still stress, but, coming into grips and saying, okay, now I'm going to get over this mountain like I got over others. And you can handle it. Now I can't speak for anybody who got a life who ain't never going home. That's a different type of thing. But I know how I coped. I knew I was going home. I just didn't want anyone to be hurt or something to happen to one of my loved ones while I was gone. That was my biggest thing. But I dealt with it, put it behind me.
Coming out on the other side of that, when you're having to put yourself back together, if you will, or go to that next step and that next opportunity. A lot of times you hear a lot of no's in that early part of being integrated back into society.
Yeah.
Are you able to kind of explain,
You know what, man?
what do you think is a good way to deal with hearing that no when you come back to the world?
You know what? I really didn't. I can't remember really hearing a lot of no's.
Mm.
See, a lot of people think they already got this negative attitude. If they get into something like that, they're gonna have it triple, quadruple hard when they get home. You can get a job. You can do this. You can do that. You have to apply yourself, maybe a little bit harder,
Mm.
but you have to apply yourself. A lot of guys use that as an excuse to go back to doing what got them in there in the first place. I call it laziness. Here I am toting around trucks over $100,000, just getting thrown the keys. Here, take the key. This truck is going to this point. Blah, blah. They're just throwing me these keys, and I have a record.
Mm.
From day one, I was honest about my record, and look where I'm at. I started doing what I do now in 2011, 10. Never looked back. Never had an issue about my past. No, nothing. You got to take certain steps and know your angle when you're going for something. You can't go somewhere for an interview looking like a slouch. You can't look the part. You understand what I'm saying? There's a certain look a lot of people look for. And they say, they already got you counted out before you say anything. Because there's a lot of people out here like that. They won't give you a fair shake.
Right.
But be presentable. Speak presentable. Return yourself back to you before you did what you did. Take yourself back to who you really are. And that's that.
And
Me, I'm not going to be denied.
who were those advocates for you, in making that transition? Did you have people in your corner that eased some of the burden of you restabilizing yourself, you coming back to who you were at the core?
Well, I have friends, man, but my friends and family wasn't. It wasn't there when I had to get acclimated back into the world. That was all me.
Hmm.
They may have been able to provide little things. Rest was up to me. So I can't really say.
And then, with you finding this career, as it's scrolling across the screen, you're a contractor that hauls heavy load vehicles across the country. You've obviously found a very good, stable way to support yourself. And then, I stay in contact with you through social media and kind of see how rigorous your schedule is and how often you are on the go. And I get the impression that you do that to keep yourself focused, to make sure that you're securing for you and yours. Um, in that time that you're driving these thousands of miles and crisscrossing across the country, I imagine that gives you a lot of time to think and reflect.
Oh,
You know, when you look at who you were as a younger man and the thought process, and who you are as a more mature man, in your 50s, you know how how do you forgive yourself? And when I say forgive yourself, I'm not saying you specifically, but how does a person forgive themselves and give themselves permission to be okay? You know what I mean? To move forward, to embrace thank yous, accolades, blessings, if you will. How do you do that? How do you accept that type of reward when others may have looked at you as a lost cause, or bruised, or not quite perfect?
you know what, man? Just how they looked at me when I was a little leaguer playing for the Chargers. You can't let what somebody else, what they eat don't make you poop. You understand what I'm saying? You have the people that look down on you. Their lives aren't perfect themselves. There's not nobody who can open up their closet without a skeleton bone falling out and hitting them in the head. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Nobody. You may not know about their skeletons, but everybody got them. Everybody. And me, I didn't take too much stock in thinking about what nobody else thought. Never. Because that would have held me back. I don't care. I don't care. How do you have all that time to think about me? You think about me. I ain't heard your name in about 10 years. I forgot you existed. Why you talking about me? How am I a big impact on you? You know, you just gotta pull yourself into yourself fully. Submerge yourself into yourself and do what you gotta do. Period. It's easy. It's easy. You know. And I've been doing what I've been doing all this time. And it's funny because some of the people that was down talking me, guess what they got into? This.
Hmm.
They and I know I had to be a little bit of an impact. He doing what? He making what? He going what? He what? Oh, I just seen him on. He what? I can't be doing too bad. It's levels to things, man. And only you know your levels. Only you know what you need to do to survive. Don't nobody else know that. Don't think I teach my kids don't think about what nobody else.
Now, when you're imparting that knowledge and that wisdom to your children, and you got some that are adults, you have some that are still finding their way. When I'm sure they just see you as dad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But um, you know, being a guy who's been in that heat of competition athletically, taking hard hits on the field, taking hard hits in life. There's that perseverance and that get up, pop up. You said Fred Harrison hit you on that slant over at YSU all those years ago, but you popped up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
mentality
yeah.
that's associated with that because some would lay down and wait for the trainer. Some would
You're,
go off to the sideline and not want to come back in the game. But
you're exactly right.
you're a Chaney guy, you're a Southside guy, you're a Youngstown guy.
I'm
You
always
pop
getting up.
up, right? Get
I'm
that
getting up.
next play. In saying that, when you think back about that life's path, your experiences, good and bad, the disappointments, the failures, the triumphs, the successes, if you had that one more down, to redo, to relive, what would that be for you? What would the scenario entail? How would you sum that up?
You know what? Um, I can't sit here and say that I even have the authority to say what I would do because what I believe is God put you in certain positions for a reason. I believe that everyone has their own book in his file cabinet. And everything that happens to you, whatever you do, how you handle it on that particular day, in the particular way it happened, was mapped out to happen because everyone has their own different lessons and how those lessons will be learned. You understand? Written by God. So whatever I got into, and it don't have to be good, he used that as a time for me to bump my head and learn and to sit back and reflect and to further on down the line teach others not to do what I did. He used that. You see, I'm here right now. If I was so bad, if I did something that was so bad, I wouldn't be here. I would still be behind bars, this and that. Like he's still trying to teach me something. He knows I learned, and he taught me in the manner he felt that I would learn, I would understand the best. Because like I told you when we started this, most of my lessons was learned the hard way. And I welcome that. It's to the point now I expect the hard way out on anything. So I really can't answer that question because I had no control over what I did. I could say what I might have wanted to do. I could say this, you know, it would have started when I was skipping school with the girl over that went to East and messed around and messed up my grades and had to leave Cheney. That where I could say it started. But who knows, man? Who knows? Bottom line is I got back up, brushed myself back off, and moved on. That's that.
You know, I appreciate you. I always find some of the insight that you give and some of that wisdom that you give, when you're in those short moments of sharing across social media here. But, I always measure that with, you know, how you treated people. And for
Hmm.
us, you for a young dude, 16, 17 years old, you kind of were a little bit ahead of your time in terms of how you looked at things. So
Hmm.
I remember you would point things out or point people out or say, well, I'm about to do this, do that. I'm going to accomplish this or that. So, I it's amazing that, what was just a short stint as a neighbor, is span 30 something plus years. And I still see those same qualities in you. And you know, just knowing what you've experienced, some of the situations that you had to face down, and then you
Hmm.
still are able to pick up, pop up, keep going, move forward, find success, and all that you mentioned, you didn't say that you were going to be mistake free. You didn't say that you were going to be perfect. All you
Hmm.
said was you're going to try. All you said
Hmm.
was you're going to move on to the next goal and keep going. And you know that's evident in how you move, how you present yourself, and then you can hear it in, you know, the topics and the things that you talk about. So, you know, you giving me this short amount of time to, you know, just reminisce, uh, get a little bit deeper into who you are as an individual and what you've turned into as a man. I'm thankful for that.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Ain't no problem over here. You know, it's an everyday thing, man. I speak what's on my mind. I tell the truth. And I keep it real. I keep it 100, man. You know what I mean? I don't speak on nothing I ain't never been through.
Mm.
How can I? You can't. You know, you can't. Somebody, if two guys are in a conversation, they speaking on something that got to do with politics that I don't know nothing about, I'm not even gonna jump in.
Mm.
I can't. You know, I'm not gonna fake it. That's just not me.